Hello and welcome to the Cooperative Game Chat. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
All right. Zero, we've got a ton to talk about. None of which are games that we're playing because we don't play actual games, you losers.
Yeah.
That's not true, but...
Yeah, there's just a lot of interesting news, both in the business side of things and then just sort of in the updates of certain franchises and stuff like that. So,
Right.
Yeah, a lot to dig into this week.
Right. So we're gonna go into a lot of what happened throughout the week, and then we're gonna update previous stories that we talked about in previous episodes. So why don't we begin with, I think, the biggest news of the past week, and that is Microsoft announced on, was it Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday.
Yeah, I believe so.
They announced on Wednesday that Starfield and Redfall from Arcane Studios and from Bethesda are both being delayed. Now, Redfall, I think you mentioned to me beforehand, was going to be a holiday release, but nothing really concrete. But Starfield came as a surprise because they actually announced a firm release date a year ago on it. So for that to be delayed was kind of a shock, even though no one's really seen anything on Starfield, and we're hoping to see stuff coming next month with the with their Xbox showcase. So, Zero, what are your thoughts of Starfield and Redfall being delayed?
Redfall, I'm not too surprised on, especially since information was a bit scant on it. The most that was really talked about were maybe some screenshots and I believe maybe a teaser video that was put out. And the premise of it is it's a co-op shooter where you and 4 vampire hunters are stuck in a town covered in vampires and you're just trying to shoot your way through it and everything. So what made it interesting was that Arcane decided to go with a open world format sort of a game for Redfall, which is a bit interesting because a lot of games in this genre, like World War Z, the new release of Ash vs. Evil Dead by the same guys who did World War Z, and even the more recent Back 4 Blood, those games sort of have a, I guess you could say, a quarter shooter sort of philosophy where you're sort of guided and directed down a scripted path and everything. So with such scant news on Redfall, for me, I was just like, okay, not a big deal that one's been delayed, no big deal. But Starfield being delayed, that really sort of was a sucker punch because I was just like, wow, really? I thought Bethesda was raring to go with that one, and that they were ready to launch that and start raking in the cash by this holiday as being the console to buy their next open world game. So that one sort of came out of left field for me. So real surprised to see that, but yeah, just it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out because I think some of the preview footage that they had released, I saw some comments saying, "Oh, it looks like it needs more time in the oven," and sort of similar comments to that general direction. So, kind of interesting that they have taken the decision to delay it, but at the same time, I don't quite know all the internal workings on what drove them to go ahead and proceed with the decision to delay.
According to Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, he was talking to devs some time ago, and they even said that they were really skeptical about making the game work at the time that they were announcing the release date. He even quoted by saying one of them said that this was going to be the next Cyberpunk, by how far along they are and what their release date was. So I guess a smart move on Xbox to I guess recognize that maybe it's not ready, and it's better to delay it than to release it as is. I think the release of Cyberpunk and the absolute shitstorm they caused because of their release probably had something to do with it. I think the release of Cyberpunk specifically is causing a lot of devs to really take a look and see if their game is really good enough to actually release. I'm not saying that they're going to release it and not going to release it until it's perfect. That's not going to happen. I think they're being more careful as to what bugs they'd find acceptable. Now, is Starfield on the Gamebryo engine, or is it on a new engine entirely?
Bethesda really hasn't disclosed.
Oh,
All they've
Jesus.
disclosed is just, hey, this is going to be our next open world game, and pretty much that's about it. And I know that they've had a couple of dev showcases on showing things like some world building trailers on, hey, these are some of the planets you'll be visiting. These are some of the creatures and denizens that you'll be encountering on this planet. Here's some of the music, and so on and so forth. So not really any sort of technical nitty gritty on if this is going to be a Gamebryo engine thing, or if they're just going to build a brand new tool set. We've got no idea on the under the hood workings of Starfield.
Okay, I'm looking at Wikipedia. Maybe not the best source. Or no, here we go. Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Game engine. They're using the Creation Engine 2, which is used for games like Skyrim, Fallout 76, and yeah. So it's using the same engine that, if we're being honest, had a ton of issues with certain games when first games came out. I remember when Skyrim came out, and there were bugs like the dragons flying backwards, or things floating up to the sky, or a piece of cheese over encumbering you for some strange reason. So maybe my hope would be that they probably looked at all those bugs and realized, we can't release it in this state because people are not as forgiving as they once was when it came to these bugs. Because, and I don't know if you remember, even when those bugs were present, they still had fantastic reviews. They still had people adoring Skyrim and how great it is, and forgiving them because of how open the game was. And that, I remember the line was at the time, it's open world, it's ambitious, so yeah, there are going to be a few bugs. Just deal with it. I don't think they're going to have that. I don't think they're going to have that leeway anymore, especially after Cyberpunk. So if that's why they're delaying it, I think that's a good move on them. I don't think that is the reason why they're delaying it, though.
Yeah, and kind of interesting was sometime on Friday there was a live stream with David Jaff, the guy behind God of War.
Oh yeah.
And, he had some harsh words for Phil Spencer because Phil Spencer had released a statement via Twitter saying, "These decisions are hard on teams making the games and our fans. While I support giving teams time to release these great games when they are ready, we hear the feedback. Delivering quality and consistency is expected, and we will work better to meet those expectations." And Jaff pretty much kind of took it to mean that Phil Spencer was sort of a bad manager on keeping his teams on task, and sort of went back in time to say, "Hey, you're basically me when I was 28," and pretty much it's to reference when he was trying to work on a project for Sony that ended up never seeing the light of day, and pretty much his school of thought is he thinks that just Phil Spencer just can't keep the team on task, and that and that's probably why that there's this delay. And not to completely throw Phil Spencer under the bus, in this live stream event that Jeff did, he
Hmm.
also added a counterpoint to say, "Hey, I think Phil Spencer is a great planner and a visionary, but
Yeah.
he's not a good manager, and he needs to find somebody who's better at keeping these teams on task so they can meet." Meet their milestones and make sure that their games come out on time instead of being delayed due to some sort of quality issue. So, kind of interesting to see his take on it. That he feels that it's that this delay is more due to Phil Spencer, and Jeff's logic is that especially after the situation with Halo Infinite with the delays and even now with Halo Infinite sort of dropping the ball on their season two, that's part of the fuel that's sort of feeding into David Jaff's criticism of Phil Spencer on this delay of both Redfall and Starfield.
Those might be valid criticisms. I think less people are going to pay attention to David Jaffe, mainly because of how outspoken and abrasive he is. But those are, that being said, they're valid. Spencer definitely has a keen eye for what the business should be and where it's going to go and what the future is. I think that's his focus. But if he's also in charge of making sure these teams have to be on focus to meet their demands, yeah, I think he may need somebody to help with that. But let's also be fair. Let's also mention that the games that are being delayed and the games that are having problems are ones that are very grand in scope. Like Halo Infinite is not only a episodic single player game, open world game that is usually a corridor like shooter game. So they're taking the original focus of Halo, making it something different. They're also turning it into a free to play multiplayer, always online multiplayer game that also hasn't been what Halo has been. So that right there is causing 343 to shift what they're used to doing, and they're had to have a different process for making their game, which is probably causing a lot of issues. I would also say that the problem with Halo Infinite is if you had more updates, I think you would get less criticism. Waiting, what's it been, 6 months since from season 1 to season 2? I'm sorry, that and without little updates in between, that's ridiculous. You can't expect people to invest in something where in a month or so they'll be done with your content, and then they have to wait another 5 months to then get the new drop. But your cash shop is completely fine, and you're updating that cash shop daily. Huh? Interesting. It's like the entire time you're just worried that you're not gonna get your sales, so that has to stay updated. So
Yeah.
they definitely
on the criticisms of Halo Infinite too, because just I think anytime the community's had issues with balance or how things are run, it's just a lot of dead air, and then basically it'll be a sudden blog post of, hey, so we kind of fixed a thing and we took your considerations into mind when doing this, and we decided to implement our own solution that's completely divorced of what the community thinks. So here you go, have fun, bye. And it's just been nothing but a shit show for the management of Halo Infinite. And while I definitely agree that most people are not going to pay attention to David Jaffe, just mostly because of the fact that just he is quite abrasive on his opinion.
yeah.
But I'm definitely with you that I feel that there is merit that, yeah, I think Phil Spencer as well is a very visionary guy. I mean, he turned around the reputation of the Xbox One and rebuilt the Xbox brand to what it is currently today.
Right.
and while he's great at that, and he's great at kind of associating with the everyman gamer, there could be credence that he just needs somebody who can be just a better manager than him, and maybe that's what this all comes down to. That just it is a management problem, and he's just got to keep the team on task somehow.
Yeah, I mean, that might Jaffe might be right. It might be he needs an extra person to keep everybody in line. But let's also, I think blaming everything on Spencer is also unfair, because let's also point out that almost every, and I mean every game except for Fallout 76, every game that Bethesda made, when it came to Elder Scrolls or Fallout or those types of games, have always had delays. Always. So, Starfield being delayed is not... It was... At first, it's like, oh, wow, that sucks. That's a surprise. But then when you think about it, it's like, well, no. That's kind of their MO. That's kind of their thing. They overshoot. They try and... Yeah, they pretty much overshoot until they realize, oh, we can't do this. Now we have to pare down and sand the edges to make sure that we have a working game. That's going to take more time. So, that's kind of... Maybe you disagree, but that's been kind of Bethesda's MO when it comes to those games.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a fair counterpoint, too. I just know that it just seemed like Bethesda was a little bit more in tune with their workflow, because they just seemed so very sure this time around, and it was just like, all right, cool. Looks like they've got a target date, and it seems like they can meet their target date, and that was why for me it was a little bit of a surprise. But in the grand scheme of things, in retrospect to the past open world games, much like Fallout and the other previous Elder Scrolls games, you're definitely right that there have been delays with those games, and maybe that's all this is. This is just kind of a cyclical point in the Bethesda development cycle. So there's definitely merit to that as well too.
When it comes to Xbox as a brand at this point, for this year specifically, what do they have to do to, I guess, is it a brand that needs to be salvaged, or is this just a hiccup or a misstep on their part where they have to kind of weather the storm and they'll get better next year?
Yeah, that is going to be hard. I have to kind of remind myself on what Xbox has coming up as far as things in the future and everything.
Right now, not much.
Yeah, because on the Xbox Ambassador site, their top eight games, not everything's exclusive, and two of the games that are on that top 8 anticipated list are both Starfield and Redfall, which those are delayed.
Yeah.
Other than that, you've got Rainbow Six Extraction, Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl, Plague Tale Requiem, Hogwarts Legacy, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands just came out. So,
yeah.
So there's that, and then the Callisto Protocol.
Yeah.
And that was their 8 upcoming ambassador picks on exciting things to be hyped for 2022.
I think
I can't think of anything else.
The console warriors, the ones that go on Twitter all day and flame each other, are going to flame each other regardless, but I think those who are interested in the business of gaming in general, I think should hold off until you see the Xbox showcase to see if they actually have more being announced this year, and that maybe there is something there that Xbox can get good sales off of.
Yeah.
Now,
I would be inclined to agree as well too, especially since there may be stuff that they've been negotiating quietly in the background.
Yeah. But do I think there is going to be something big that will that will make people not miss Starfield? No, not really. But I think I would be surprised if the showcase in June is all games that are coming out in 2023. Because if that is, then yeah, they're giving up this year and they're focusing on next year. And would that hurt the brand for right now? Yes, a little bit. But I think once those games do come out and they are really good and they sell well, this year won't matter. So that's how I look at it. Let's move on to our next topic. Zero, I know that you're a big Fall Guys fan, right?
Not really. I don't even own the game.
God damn it, Zero. God damn it. Oh!
Mostly because there has been a little bit of a cheating issue in the game right now.
Yeah.
Where, they haven't really gotten their anti-cheat down. So, but that's my personal opinion on it. But to kind of loop into our next big story, Fall Guys is going completely free to play in June, and I'm trying to remind myself of the date.
June 11th, I think you said.
Geez, my brain. June 21st.
June 21st, okay.
And what makes this announcement significant is the fact that not only is it going free to play on June 21st, but that's also the date that the game will also feature cross-platform play and cross-progression. So, for anyone who's been playing Fall Guys since the day it launched, if you choose to play on another platform, you will not lose all the cool costume pieces and cosmetics that you've earned from the previous seasons. You'll be able to take them with you no matter where you choose to play.
Yeah.
So, huge news for anyone who has dropped money on the cash shop and everything to buy some of the costumes, or anyone who has purchased the previous season passes and have grinded those season passes to completion to get every single reward. So
I didn't realize they had season passes in that game.
Yep.
Okay.
So kind of neat news for anyone who has been hesitant to pick up Fall Guys, because once it goes free to play, then it doesn't matter where you choose to play. You'll be able to play with friends and lobby up with them no matter where they choose to play. There has been a little bit of contrition in the community because part of this free-to-play announcement was that with the conversion of the game going free-to-play on June 21st, one of the currencies that has been integral to the game is going away, and that currency would be the crown currency. And as far as I can understand it from reading up on some of the forums and wikis about the subject, crowns are basically a currency that you can only earn by playing the game or by the occasional Twitch drop. So you could earn crowns that way, and then crowns could be used during season pass events for certain costumes that you could only buy during that season pass, and certain costumes that were sort of evergreen but could only be bought with crowns, and pretty much the only way to get them would literally just be to play the game. So that currency is going to be completely done away with, and the decision that the developers decided to go with is that anything that was limited to crowns only being the only vehicle to purchase those costumes, the price will now be changed on June 21st to kudos, and kudos is the cash shop currency, which, granted, you can still earn that through playing the game, but as with any game that has multiple currencies, if you choose to try to grind it out for free, you won't earn as much as, say, a person who decides to open their wallet and just pay flat out for a stack of the cash currency.
Right. So I think a lot of people were surprised by this, and I understand why. Looking at the sales numbers for Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, they sold, as of 2020, over 7 million units. And that's within the first month of its release on Steam. So, and I was Fall Guys a PS Plus download?
Yep. When it first launched on PC and PS4, it was exclusively at least for consoles, it was exclusively a PlayStation thing.
Right.
And to sort of help get its visibility out, it was also a free PS Plus download. So that got a lot of people interested into the game and gave the game a lot of visibility.
Right. Because I remember when it was popular, it was a free download, and a lot of people were playing it. And did they have microtransactions in there as well for costumes?
I believe so.
Okay. So, it would be fair to say that they were doing well in sales. So, I don't know if sales dropped in the past couple of years since it's gotten less popular, but I think it being free to play was a surprise to a lot of people with how popular it was. My guess is that they looked at the tech they needed to do the cross-platform and the cross-progression, realized it was more expensive than they realized, and so they're going free to play. And they're hoping to get more money through there, which they generally will. They probably will get more money by going free to play. So, now, will it be a major success? I don't know. I think Fall Guys had that small 3-month period of time where it was huge, and then it dropped off, and that was it. So unless they change the game drastically, I don't think this is going to mean it's going to have big sales. I think it just will have more of a sustainable income for it to be run for years to come, as my take.
There is actually one point I just remembered.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this announcement was something that was huge, and this got the Fall Guys community really excited. So one of the other features that they're adding is they're adding a map editor to Fall Guys, which will be available on all platforms.
That is not a bad idea.
Yeah. So when I saw that was sort of kind of the bonus thing that they added on the tail end of their announcement, I was just like, okay, this free to play announcement on top of the cross platform play and cross progression, and now the ability to play through custom made maps from the community or your friends and whatnot. Okay, yeah, I could definitely see some staying power on this, and of course, just with those sort of community maps, just you'll have people in interesting costumes and stuff like that, and that might drive more sales to the cosmetic shop for people to buy more packs of kudos, the cash currency, and buy more costumes. So at least that's my take on it with this whole community free map builder thing.
Okay. All right. So they're adding more features as well to the game. That's interesting. Okay. I mean, it still stands with me. I think this will just make Fall Guys to be more sustainable when it comes to sales, and be able to just run that game in infinity until the sales drop off and they shut it down. So that's what I think. I don't think this is going to be a huge sales boon for the creators of the game. I just think it's a sustainability issue, and that's it.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to agree as well too that this isn't some sort of like magic panacea to just spike sales, but yeah, I can definitely concur with you that this is likely just maybe to kind of build out their coffers to fund whatever their next project is.
Okay. So let's move on to another. We'll talk about some sales for a game that came out 5 years ago. That's Final Fantasy 15. They just announced, either on Twitter or through their PR, that Final Fantasy 15 has made 10 million, has sold 10 million worldwide, making it a sales success. Now,
and for anyone wondering, that 10 million figure accounts for all versions of the game on all platforms. So we're talking PS4, Xbox One, PC, the standard edition of the game, the limited edition of the game, and then the later Royal Edition, which is sort of a Game of the Year version that includes the main game plus the season pass and any other related downloadable content.
Yeah, and that led you specifically to wonder about the sales when it came to Final Fantasy, and right now it looks as if let's look back at that again. Final Fantasy mainline.
As far as some of the sales numbers, I think most curious, as far as something that is in the recent mind space, is 7 Remake, um, which that one has sold at least from the period of April April of 2020 to August of 2020, 5 million total copies reported.
Yeah, which actually is not. That's very good. So
Yeah, and in my mind, that was kind of interesting considering that it took almost 5 years for 15 to sell even 10 million, and that 7 Remake in a matter of a few months already did half of that.
yeah. Now, the sales probably would have been a lot better if the PC version actually was good. Because from what I've heard from people that have gotten the PC version, it's all sorts of screwed up.
Yeah,
So,
and the PC version of 7 Remake is its own chimera, so
yeah.
and I don't believe Square has since reported on sales figures from the PC version plus the PS4 Integrate version as well too, since
Yeah.
the Integrate copy came with the Yuffie DLC as well.
Okay. But would you? Well, I would kind of expect in 5 years that Final Fantasy VII Remake would probably beat Final Fantasy 15, though. That would be my thought process, at least.
Yeah, but I think if Square ever decides to aggregate numbers for both the PC version and the PS5 version, then the numbers may indeed be higher than 15. But ultimately, we'll have to see how that pans out in general. So it'll be really interesting to see once we get to that point. But at this rate, it'll be hard to really sort of suss out the numbers, especially if Square Enix hasn't really done any formal reporting.
Yeah. But I guess a part of me is kind of surprised it made 10 million because 15 wasn't really celebrated. People liked it, but I don't think it was one where people were really passionate about the game.
Yeah, it was interesting. I know some people sort of take issue that it was sort of um, a adventure about a bunch of bros doing world savey sort of things, and instead of having kind of like the usual cast of male and female characters as seen with previous Final Fantasy games. I know some people took issue with that,
Mm,
but I know me personally, I thought the game was fun. The ending's a bit of a tearjerker, so I won't spoil it for anyone who has any intention of possibly playing 15 in the future. But definitely worth it. And also, the DLC chapters in the Royal Edition are definitely worth your time because they sort of explain one of the story gaps that was originally uh, present um, in the original release of the game. So the DLC being included with Royal Edition is great because it fills in a lot of the gaps in the story, which, in my opinion, I feel that they're essential to understand. But again, that's sort of my take on it.
okay. I was just surprised that, according to sales numbers, 15 is the third highest selling of the mainline Final Fantasy games. That's 7 and 10 are 1 and 2. So 15 having so much sales just surprised me a bit. So that's the thing that when you told me that it reached 10 million, my immediate thing was, oh, that's probably like 7th or 8th, right? No, it's 3rd. So
Yeah.
that kind of surprised me. So all right, so our next topic for our mostly or all newscast. Activision Blizzard is at it again, Zero, and with them trying to rebuild their image from being they were simply just a company that cared about sales to a company that actively brought women and minorities down. And with this problem that they're having, it seems like they are using math in order to solve their problems when it comes to their social faux pas. It was announced it was a report that happened on Friday that apparently Activision Blizzard has a mathematical diversity tool that it's been a while since I've read it, but from what I can remember, it's basically a spreadsheet or a type of algorithm that randomly spits out social or diversity check marks to create a character. So, like, for example, you type in you want a character, and it'll automatically spit out a pansexual black lesbian who's in a wheelchair, and that's your new character. I'm not kidding. This is exactly what this tool was.
What made this whole issue worse was before the report came out, this was posted on the Activision Blizzard. I believe it was sort of like a PR relations blog, and the guy who made the announcement, I believe he was part of the King side of the house, and in the original blog post, in its original posting, they used some examples from Overwatch, basically featuring some Overwatch characters saying, "Hey, for example, here's one character from Overwatch, and this is where their scores would fall on this new diversity tool we're using," and so on and so forth. And then the blog post also detailed, "Hey, so we're also using this tool actively in games such as Overwatch 2." And that's where sort of this report sort of blew up and exploded once this blog had hit the Activision Blizzard blog site, and then sort of took off once the news sites picked it up.
So wait a minute, you're telling me that King, which is part of Activision Blizzard, actually put this on their PR page as an advertisement?
Yeah, it was on.
Dear.
Activision PR blog, and this guy, I believe he was possibly like an engineer person of some sort over at the King side of the house, and was talking about this tool and how, and in the original posting, had mentioned that it was being actively used in Overwatch 2, which is currently in, I believe, in open beta stage right now. And that's sort of where the news organization took off, and we're like, Activision Blizzard is using this diversity tool to calculate diversity of characters to make more inclusive characters by virtue of math.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because there's been some fallout since the news articles had hit, and worst off is that anyone who has been involved in the development of any Activision Blizzard games, like, I don't know, Overwatch 2, they've had to sort of divorce themselves from this blog post.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, there was one woman from the Overwatch 2 development team who had basically said something to the tune of, we're trying so hard for some of us who are just trying to just put out the best damn product that we can to sort of build a good reputation that, not all of us are scumbags at Activision Blizzard.
Yeah.
And the suits put this thing out and actively sabotage any sort of goodwill that we were trying to build. And in addition to this, her post also says, yeah, and to clarify, the Overwatch team doesn't use this tool. So actively trying to distance themselves from this tool.
Right.
And then her point to wit was, yeah, on the Overwatch team, we don't use this tool because we use our eyes.
Hmm.
So it was not a great look for Activision Blizzard to put this PR blog post saying, "Hey, look, we're using math to be inclusive," and one of the most high-profile teams of Activision Blizzard saying, "Yeah, they might use it somewhere else in the company. We sure as hell don't."
Yeah. And that is a shame. It's good to point out that the problems with what it looks like to be diversity and with their treatment of women is something from the top up. It's not something really from, let's say, from a coder or from a developer that they should be dealing with, or they shouldn't have to deal with it, but unfortunately some had. Those people seem to be trying to make a game, and they have to deal with this extraneous bullshit because the higher ups can't get their act together. I think where this, in some circles that I follow on Twitter, this made the news interesting, is because of Overwatch 1. And remember the announcement that what's her name? Shit. What's that character's name? I haven't played Overwatch in a while.
Teleporting character, that's Tracer.
Tracer, thank you. Remember when they announced that Tracer was gay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how every website was praising this as, oh, it's great for diversity, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I still remember all the websites sort of offering their commentary about the announcement.
Right. But there was room for criticism in that. And the criticism was that if you played the game, you would have no idea that Tracer was gay. There was no story. There was no character development. There was literally nothing in the game that, I don't know if they put a pride flag in the game later on to signify this for Tracer. I don't know.
No, actually, what it was so back when there was a lot more effort in world building for Overwatch, occasionally there would be things like comic strips that would be posted to the Overwatch game site.
Right.
And one of the comics was where Tracer was sort of talking about just her life away from the organization on what she likes to do outside of work and everything. And it had sort of a scene where she was hanging out with her girlfriend, and pretty much it was just like, yeah, so just this, I love spending time with my girlfriend because she's such an important factor in my life, or something to that sort. And then that was kind of the hey, by the way, Tracer's gay, kind of in a real sort of quiet sort of way, because yeah, it wasn't really a big PR blast or anything like that. It was just buried in a lore comic.
But it was a PR blast because Blizzard was making the rounds to announce it.
Yep. So I mean, eventually they got to it, but yeah, it started off with the depiction in the comic and everything. And I was going to say, interesting side note about that comic: in countries where homosexuality is frowned upon, such as, I don't know, in Russia, yeah, that comic does not exist.
Yeah, of course. And that's probably why it's not in the game. And they probably never will put it in the game, because they want to sell it in Russia and Saudi Arabia, in wherever that they outlaw homosexuality. So that when I heard the news of that I honestly, I was like, okay, that's cool, but it's not in the game, so why is this a big deal? That was my criticism. It's like you're what it sounds like is you're pandering to a crowd that desperately wants that representation, and you're just saying, take a look at this piece of paper. See? You're being represented. This person that just so happens to be this character is, but we're not going to put it in the game. But see? Yeah. Right here. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, because just like you said, it's not inside the game, the in-game lore, but it's external game lore, but even then, it's limited to countries where homosexuality isn't considered an outlawed and taboo thing.
Right. I I I will always mention this game because I love this game. I will always mention Gone Home. There needs to be more character development and more of a meaningful story if you're going to touch on homosexuality that is like, maybe not exactly like it, but that gives, how do I put this, that really touches on the subject in a sensitive and profound way, like Gone Home did. And I would love to have more games like that, because even as a straight guy, because I love women, that's just how I am. But even as a straight guy, some of the best stories have involved around homosexuality, and I always look for good stories, and it just so happens that some of the best stories, some of the best movies in the past 10 years, 15 years, have revolved around homosexuality. So I think having it in games is a good thing. I just wish they would. I wish they would define them as characters than define them as a statistic. That's my grievance I have. If you're gonna do it right. Don't just say, "Oh, by the way, this person who shoots a gun, gay." Okay, great, big deal. Oh, this person that can throw a grenade, bisexual. Okay, yeah, all right, sure. Great.
Yeah, and I agree. Just this was kind of just really in poor taste for Activision Blizzard to really reveal. But what makes the story funny is, if you remember, I said that there was a previous mention, keyword being previous, that Overwatch 2 was actively using this tool.
Yes.
So after the backlash, coincidentally, that blog entry has been changed, and the entry for the blog post now says, no actively developed games are currently using this tool.
Yeah.
So
Now,
they have since walked it back.
now, the question really is, though, do you believe that they've been using this tool? I think yes. I think they have been.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say it's more than likely that this tool is seeing active use somewhere in the ABK organization as a whole, but I want to say at least it can be confirmed that the Overwatch 2 development team is not using it, especially with how loud and vocal a lot of the folks from that team have been to go as far as divorcing themselves from this tool. Saying, yeah, we aren't using this because we have something called eyeballs, and we actually use them.
Yeah. I think the only way this tool could be any use is if you have really, and I mean really talented writers who are just bored one day and go, okay, let me see what this tool does. Okay, maybe I can make a story about that and make a well-crafted story based on a few keywords. But you'd have to be really gifted to do that. I used to do that for fun when it came to, let's say, God, this is gonna oh God, back when Marvel Comics made trading cards, I would write this was when I was 10. I would randomly choose trading cards and type up a story based on the two characters I chose and a battle that they would have. And admittedly, if I read them now, they would be shit. They would be terrible. But that's akin to what this tool is. It's basically a lazy corporate tool to substitute creativity with algorithms and to make the most money they can by using that algorithm by making a diversity quota. It's silly. It would just be silly if it wasn't attached to Activision Blizzard, who have actively had these problems. So that's why it's a little insidious.
Yeah, and I think my overall commentary has been that just Activision Blizzard just they keep dunking on themselves, and
Yeah.
this is just the gift that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, they need to. I think that for the next 3 to 6 months, they need to just suspend their PR department and just say, "Don't release anything, please. Just don't no like unless it's a patch notes update, release that, but make it so vanilla that no one, and I mean no one, can be offended by it. Just do that, and then once everything is set with the FTC and with Xbox and everything, then we'll come back and we'll start something. But for now, let's just shut everyone up, develop games, and that's it. I think that's what they should be doing.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Zero, we've had a bunch of updates on previous stories that we covered in previous episodes. So why don't we get into some of that? About a few episodes ago, we talked about the PlayStation Plus, the restructuring that they're having that's coming in June. Well, I think we had a special episode, and then we covered it again. They announced the game lineup that's going to be on PS Plus, and we're not going to get into all the games that were announced for it. But let's just talk about, in general, what we think of the lineup and if this changes our minds when it comes to buying the upper tiers.
All right. As far as some of the PS4 stuff goes, a lot of PlayStation Studio Direct titles, which it's great to see those because some of those games are just real good. I mean, classic example would be Bloodborne. Bloodborne's going to be one of those that's available. Granted, it's been given away a ton of times on PlayStation Plus, and it's on sale for dirt cheap during some of the sales and everything. But one of the other recent titles in the PS4 lineup is Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which is an excellent game to have featured on there. And as far as some of the third-party stuff, there is a bulk of what Ubisoft likes to call Ubisoft Plus Classics. So things that have been I guess, critic renowned from the Ubisoft catalog. And what's interesting is Ubisoft is also sort of launching their own sort of EA Play like service that part of it will be available via the premium tiers of the new PlayStation Plus service. And with Ubisoft Plus Classics, we're talking stuff like Far Cry 4, The Division, and stuff like that. So kind of interesting to see games like that being available. And as far as the classic catalogs go, unfortunately, that's a little bit on the bare side, and at least in my opinion, because you've got some good original PlayStation stuff, Ape Escape, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, as far as the first party stuff, and then as far as third party stuff on PlayStation, Tekken 2 and Mr. Driller from Bandai Namco. One's great, the other one's kind of a niche thing, so not really too great on the PS1 front. And then PS2 a little bit more solid there. So I mean, you've got both Dark Cloud games, some of the Jack and Daxter games. So not too bad on some of the classic remastered games and everything. PS3, the PS3 selection isn't too bad. Looks like it's a pretty solid lineup of stuff. Unfortunately, as we covered in one of the previous episodes, the downside is the fact that with the PS3 stuff, it is only available via cloud emulation. So it's going to be latency city for games that require sort of reflex precision, like Demon Souls, the original on PS3. That's going to be a horrible time playing it on cloud.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got solid stuff like Tokyo Jungle, which is an excellent game, and it's great that it's getting a second lease on life on the service. But yeah, I would rather have that as a actual hard drive download uh, instead of just being playable on the cloud. So um, overall, kind of neat. And then of course, they did announce their time trial games, which are games that um, abide by the new trial policy that they're debuting with their new premium or deluxe plan. And if anyone remembers, it's premium for some of the regions don't that don't have the ability to cloud stream, and then deluxe is what it will be called for the highest tier for anyone who's in a country that does have the cloud streaming option available. So overall, kind of a neat announcement. I think really the most significant part of this announcement was something that was in the blog, and oddly wasn't something that they mentioned on the little video trailer that they put out, which, in my opinion, is probably the biggest and most important piece of this announcement, which is for anyone who may have had some of the original PS1, PS2 classics, or even PS3 games purchased back back on your PS3 during the infancy of PlayStation Network. If you own if you own a game that is a part of this subscription service, or when it becomes available as part of this subscription perk, if you own it, regardless of what tier package you're on, you will be able to download that game onto your PS5.
Yes.
Say for the PS3 stuff. But naturally, the fact that that you'll be able to download what you had previously purchased on PS3 or PSP, that's huge.
Yes.
I mean, as odd as it sounds, just this was something that was very important to a lot of people, because they were just like, the PS3 unfortunately isn't going to last forever. So what about our collection that we may have built up via PSN on our PS3s? Does that just stay in the dust, or are we going to be able to keep those purchases as well too?
Yeah, and I hate to praise that, because that just should be a given. You should just be able to get those purchases, especially if you are able to play them on your PS5 if you've already purchased them. But I think we both thought that they were going to just be like, you need the service, so what are you going to do, asshole? There you go. But the fact that they did do that is good. In regards to the service, I mean, here's the honest truth. I own most of the games that are on there. So for me to then go ahead and get the service when I own most of them is kind of a pointless endeavor for me. If you don't own most of the games, some of the games are good. I think Everybody's Golf is pretty good. You get all the Dark Clouds. You get there are some good games on there that are worth getting. Does it beat, let's say, Game Pass, which not only has the Xbox games that the Xbox Studios games that are in there, but also a bunch of indies? Not really. So that's my thing. Like, I'm looking at this and going, you don't have that big of a lineup here. You're what you have is good, but for me to spend, what is it, $20 a month to get the service, And
or 120 for an entire year if you're going the deluxe tier, which is the top tier.
Right. And then the retro offerings are not great. I mean, why do you have Tekken 2 and not Tekken 3? I mean, to me, if you want the best version of Tekken, which to me is 3. Maybe you think 2 is better. I don't know, but
No, I definitely agree. 3 was the better one of all the PlayStation versions of Tekken. Yeah, 2 is sort of an odd choice. And I also forgot to mention. So anyone who was playing on PS Now via PC and didn't want to pick up a PS4, PS5, essentially it to even use the streaming perk, you'd have to buy the deluxe tier, and the deluxe tier would only limit you as a PC only player just to the PS3 stuff. And the only reason for that is the ability to stream the games. So if you're a PC person who just wanted to continue playing PlayStation stuff without buying a PlayStation console, yeah, you'd essentially, instead of the much cheaper previous PlayStation Now subscription, now you're forced to purchase the deluxe tier. And even then, you're going to lose out on so many of the other benefits by not owning a PlayStation console. So, kind of a disadvantage for anyone who was on PC and was more than happy with just playing some of the stuff via streaming. And any of the classic games, it doesn't look like they will be available to stream on PC. And that may change when it gets a little closer to the launch date. But yeah, on the blog post, I don't see them mentioning anything of to the sort of, hey, if you're just on PC, you'll be able to play some of this stuff uh, on PC.
That's weird. That's weirdly limited.
Yeah, especially considering I think that there's some PS4 and PS5 games that are available on PlayStation Now, so kind of weird not to make the mention of, hey, by the way, all the free games we're offering uh, on the deluxe tier, you will be able to play them via streaming if you're on PC. So, yeah, at least that's kind of my commentary on that matter.
Okay. Okay. I mean, we kind of gave our 2 cents on it. So, I mean, it's decent, but I don't like. I have Game Pass, so I don't really look at it. I don't look at the PlayStation one and say I have to have that too. I look at that and go, yeah, that's good, but honestly, I have Game Pass, so I think I get more with Game Pass at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for anyone who's sort of the value gamer, I would still point them to just Game Pass,
Yeah.
especially since there's just no limitations on how you can choose to play. So if you're a person who absolutely does not care about anything to do with an Xbox console, then you can just go with the Xbox Game Pass PC offering and still get a ton of content to play on PC. But if you choose to go with Game Pass Ultimate, then you have the ability to stream to your PC, which is great, especially if you want to play some Xbox only stuff. Then you have the ability to stream it to your PC. Um, if you're on the go, then you can pop out your mobile phone and just play stuff via streaming to your mobile phone. And yeah, just tons of ways to play, a huge rotating collection of stuff, just um, overall just a better value. And the fact that you get first party Xbox stuff available right when you sign up and right the day that it launches, that's hard to beat, especially if you're the value minded gamer who wants to be able to play the games day one, but you might be on a fixed budget that you have to kind of pick and choose whichever game you're going to buy out for the $60 to $70 price tag that new games are going for.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for those who are die-in-the-wool Sony fanboys who say that gamers don't care if you have to spend $70 on paying for a new game, even if it's available for download first day on a pass. No, they do care. If you can get it cheaper, they care. So, as long as that option's there, Game Pass kind of beats Sony at what they're trying to do. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you too. Game Pass, I think, is better. If you only get one pass, I would be getting Game Pass, and I would definitely take a look at what Sony's doing from time to time, see if they're improving. But yeah, as of right now, I'm sticking to Game Pass.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it on one of the previous episodes, but I will probably be investigating the deluxe tier just out of journalistic integrity.
Yeah.
So whenever that launches, expect to hear a more detailed report from me when that rolls around.
Yeah, you convinced me to get an Xbox Series X, so I'm not doing it. So, out of spite, I am gonna make you do it. So,
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay, we'll move on. Zero, you have an update with the community tournament issues that Street Fighter V is having. So, why don't you give that quickly?
Yeah. So previously, Capcom had released some terms for basically any smaller community-run tournaments for the Street Fighter V scene, which had some really, really, really low limitations on just things like how much a sponsor could donate to help your game out, um, where you could hold the venues, and even more kind of a scummy term. One of the things that they had also limited was the use of any sort of community photography that uh, Capcom would own any photos taken during these community tournaments wholesale. So it basically stripped any tournament photographers of any sort of creative copyright that they may have had to the pictures that they may have taken during the tournament. And it got a lot of backlash from the community, and rightfully so, because just the terms almost seem to suffocate the community-run tournaments in favor of just telling anyone who is interested in the tournament scene of Street Fighter to just suck it up and go ahead and just participate in one of the big Capcom Pro Tour tournaments instead. So um, after all the backlash, naturally, just uh, I want to say it was maybe a day or two later, Capcom then put out a PR statement saying, "Hey, we hear the community's concerns. We get everyone's a bit angry, maybe a bit heated about this. We're going to go back to the drawing board and we're
Mm-hmm.
going to try to revise things. So please stay tuned. We'll have more to announce in the future." And of course, at the time this PR announcement was made, everyone had kind of wrote it off as, watch, Capcom's just gonna, just um, flip a coin and say, nope, we're still right. So, we're just gonna roll full steam ahead. And what came as a surprise to a lot of people was that Capcom made good on their promise to revisit the agreement, and they've offered some changes that are definitely, eh, in the most part, in favor of the community. There's still some pieces that aren't great, but overall, generally things are better. So the first point is that the prize pool limit per tournament was originally at $2,000 in prizes per event. That has now been increased to $10,000 per event.
Okay.
So, yeah, a huge improvement, which is great because that means sponsors can definitely help load up on the prizes and everything. Um, Previously, there was a limitation that the yearly prize pool limit for a community run tournament series was $10,000. That limit has since been removed. So there is no yearly prize limit.
Hmm.
And again, that's another great thing to see. Um, Third point, the sponsorship limit went from being capped at $5,000 to now $6,000 per event. Not great, but still a little bit better. So that one, uh, that one is just kind of what it is. Uh, the other part is that sponsorship limits for a community tournament went from a yearly limit of $20,000 now to $30,000. So 10K increase. Again, kind of like the sponsorship limit per event. Not a great increase, but not a terrible limit at any rate. And then these two pieces are a little bit important for the community scene. So previously, Capcom had stipulated that any community tournaments that were being run, you could not charge spectators to view the tournament. And this one this one sort of angered a lot of folks because uh, some of these tournaments because they some of the community tournaments because they attract such a crowd, they potentially draw in a lot of spectators, which could help also fund the prize pool. And for Capcom to basically say, hey, you can only charge entry fees to participants, but you cannot charge fees to spectators to kind of go and view your event. This one sort of got a lot of the community tournament runners a little bit angry about it, because it was just their counterpoint was, you know, sometimes the spectator fees help us run these tournaments and help us keep the tournament scene sustainable. That has been changed, and now tournament runners may now charge a spectator fee to spectators who want to come in and watch a tournament and not participate. The second one, which is also important to some of these event runners, is that previously there was a restriction that if you were trying to run a community tournament and you ran it at a bar, that you were prohibited to run the tournament at a bar. That restriction has been lifted, but the stipulation is if you as a tournament official are trying to run a community tournament at a bar, you or any of the staff who are running the tournament cannot own the bar. And additionally, you cannot have an alcohol company sponsor your tournament. So, so you can't have like Bud Light saying, "Hey, we want to sponsor your tournament, and we want to donate like $3,000-$4,000 in prizes," or you can't have like Jack Daniels saying, "Hey, we don't really have prizes to donate, but can we throw in some money to your prize pot?" So you can't have any of that. And this restriction being lifted was definitely great, because I know at least in the North Texas area, there is a small community tournament series called Texas Bar Fights, which was considered a community-run tournament that was running Street Fighter V tournaments every once in a while. The original restriction would have completely eliminated that community tournament. So this restriction being lifted is great, because that means that Texas Bar Fights is no longer at a risk of being canceled. And the last change on this agreement is, in my opinion, one of the big ones, especially as someone who's a hobbyist photographer. So previously, the terms for taking any pictures at any community-run tournaments was that by taking pictures at a community-run Street Fighter V tournament, was you forfeit any copyright licensing to any pictures you take, and Capcom wholesale owns any pictures you take during the tournament. And this got a lot of the folks who were doing things like taking pictures, recording video footage from the tournaments. It just kind of turned a lot of these folks away, going, well, that's not great. I can't build my professional portfolio to show that I'm a successful person who is doing videography or photography for the fighting game community, and I basically forfeit all of my pictures up to Capcom. No way. Screw that. I'm not going to do any more photography for any sort of event that is considered a Capcom community Street Fighter V tournament. So Capcom went back to the drawing board and has decided to just do away with that restriction completely, which is huge. And additionally, on top of removing this restriction, Capcom has clarified that should you take photos or videos during an official tournament, and should they choose to use them for marketing or PR purposes, instead they will now work directly with the photographer or videographer to sort out the details, be it buying out the picture or the video outright, or paying some sort of licensing fee to the person who took the photo or video of a tournament. And that is a good thing to see. So Overall, good for Capcom for making these changes, but I still think the sponsorship limits are a little bit low, but overall it's mostly a good trade-off, even if there's still a little bit of improvement that, in my opinion, could be done.
Those all sound like good improvements. The bar thing is kind of weird, but I think that's more of a PR thing to stop maybe some controversies. But okay, Yeah, I don't. I everything that you've mentioned just seems like an improvement from what was before, so that's good. So let's move on to our last update. We mentioned a couple episodes ago that it was rumored that EA and FIFA were having issues when it came to the licensing agreement for their FIFA soccer / football games. Soccer in the U.S., it's football elsewhere. Okay. Well, it turns out that an announcement was made that EA is, in fact, going to not have the FIFA license anymore. They're not going to pay the fees that FIFA wants. So they're going to be EAFC after this year. So that's basically it. We discussed it in length during the episode where we talked about it. Basically, my thoughts have not changed. It's going to take them a few years to get their sales back. And by that point, FIFA might just turn around after that few years and say, we'll give you a much better deal to put FIFA back on there. But from what it sounds like, FIFA is making it sound like they're going to continue to make games with other companies, and that they're bragging they'll be better than what EA is doing, which we'll see. So,
Yeah, and I thought FIFA's announcement was kind of funny because it was just kind of so we're the original FIFA. We're the guys who actually own the organization structure. So it's our game that will be the best, and we've got a developer in the pocket, and they're going to make a fantastic product. Just you guys sit and wait. Just we've got the better product was sort of how their PR blast sounded to me. I don't know if you got a chance to read their the FIFA org little video game announcement.
Yep, I did. I mean, it's funny that people are invested in this, since these are two companies that literally people can't stand in when it comes to normal situations. But the fact that I think everyone's on EA's side saying that's ridiculous to pay that much for the FIFA brand. So yeah, do what you gotta do, whatever. But FIFA has always been a corrupt company, reportedly. So, and EA is not really the darling of the gaming industry. So to see these two batted out has been sort of cathartic. But yeah, other than that, I don't. The only interest I have is what will this do for sales for EA, and it'll dip a little, but I think it will get back to where it was, and that's it. That's all this is. This is a stumbling block for a few years until either A, they gain the license back, or B, they gain the sales back to where they'll just be the number one football brand anyway. So. It's interesting, but I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how the FIFA game shapes up, or if they've been working with, I don't know, maybe Konami or something to basically take over, to try to take over the Pro Evolution Soccer series. I forget what the new name for that is called now. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how this all pans out, because FIFA's talking a big game, but kind of like the saying that I always kind of fall back on is they got to either put up or shut up. So
yeah. Well, Zero, this being the end of the episode, we have to do one last thing. I have a question for you.
All right.
Now, us being who we are, knowing each other for a long time, and being as intimate and as close as we've been in these past few years, we often find out about things about ourselves that surprises us and makes us appreciate each other more, not only as people, but as human beings. And yesterday, of a random conversation that we were having, I found something so beautiful about you that I had to share it with everybody. And that is that you're a Simpsons fan. And as you should be, because The Simpsons, at least seasons 2 through 11, are some of the best and funniest television ever to be produced. So you should be. If you are a good person, you are a Simpsons fan, at least from seasons 2 to 11. So, the question is, Zero, what is your favorite Simpsons episode?
I kind of discussed this at length with you yesterday, but
Uh-huh.
oddly, it's the episode for the Treehouse of Horror 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mostly because it sort of riffs off of some great sci-fi and horror movies that are classics to culture today. Um, that one kind of went over some really good ones. So first part of that episode is The Shinning, which is a play off of Stephen King's The Shining, and it's definitely got the influence of the Stanley Kubrick movie as well too. So that one, that story was hilarious to me, especially as someone who has a lot of love for both the novelization of The Shining and Stanley Kubrick's depiction of it in movie form. So that one was good, and then the second story is uh, Time and Punishment, which is a playoff of a Stanley, or excuse me, a Ray Bradbury. Believe it's either a short story or a novel called A Sound of Thunder,
Mm-hmm.
and that one is where just Homer screws up the timeline in just irreversible ways, and to kind of go with the episode's recurring gag, just Willie comes out of nowhere to say, "Hey, I can help you get back to your own time," and then immediately he gets whacked with an axe in the back and dies, and then you hear Maggie with James Earl Jones's voice saying, "This is a disturbing universe indeed," and Homer just tries to go through destroying the past in ways to try to change the timeline within something of normality, and finally gets to a reality that he's okay with and sort of moves on. And then the last one, I forget what the title of that one is, but it's the episode plays off of the movie Soylent Green, which which is kind of crazy in its own way, because basically just it kind of plays off of the fact that Springfield Elementary still has financial problems, and that they just can't get any good quality meat. So of course they start eating the students that are in detention and everything. So kind of a goofy episode, uh, and it was like I've mentioned, just I'm not the biggest fan of the Treehouse of Horror episodes, but
Hmm.
this one isn't quite too gory, but it isn't quite too. Um, I guess the best way I can put it is it doesn't really pluck low-hanging fruit as far as riffing off of other media and things like that. And I just feel that I just love Treehouse of Horror 5 for
Yeah.
that reason.
God, there's so many great episodes of The Simpsons. I mean, there is the episode where Bart works at a bordello. There's the numerous episodes where Principal Skinner almost gets killed. There's the episode where Selma gets married to Troy McClure. There is the two brother episodes for Homer. Homer going to space. Homer's mortal enemy. Bart selling his soul. There are just so many good episodes. So much that I don't like to talk about what's my favorite episode, really, more than what are my favorite lines and what are my favorite jokes. But Marge and the Monorail is probably one of my favorite episodes.
Oh yeah, that one's a good one too.
And just because every gag in it works so damn well, including like Chief Wiggum for trying to is having a hard time realizing that Leonard Nimoy is not from I think it was Star Wars. He's like, "May the Force be with you." It's like, you don't know who I am, do you?
Yeah,
Cape
and
Cape Fieri. Oh my God. Just such great episodes, and with
yeah,
really good gags.
yeah, and it's kind of a shame too because sometime after season 11, something happened, and uh, I've kind of talked at length in my Discord channel about it before, but um, there is a YouTube content creator by the name of Super Eye Patch Wolf. He has a great video on just it's kind of an essay about why The Simpsons sort of lost their magic after season 11 and they've been sort of in a zombie state. And that essay is just so good, but at the same time, it hurts so much,
Yeah.
especially just with how great some of the stuff up to season 11 had been. Just there have been so many good gags. The writing was just so sharp and so witty, and just somewhere after season 11, it just kind of fell off the boat, and it's just been sort of in a zombie state ever since.
Yeah. I mean, The Simpsons now will always be a tale of when to stop, when to just quit it and maintain your legacy. Because I think if they stopped at 12, they would probably be considered one of the best TV series of all time, period. It would be one of the best comedies. It would be one of the best TV series. It would be up there with The Sopranos, which I also have issues with, as one of the best TV series of all time. But since it's been now, what is it? They just announced they're doing another season. I think it's 39. At
Yeah, I
this point,
believe something like that.
yeah, at this point, it's just like, end it already. I mean, it's just like, you're. I guess they have to be printing money if they keep doing this. So someone's unfortunately watching this, but man, like I think we mentioned we mentioned on the phone here. The last episode I watched, and I'll admit I haven't watched most of the newer episodes, was the one where they made a reference to Studio Ghibli, and I didn't laugh once. I was like and for me who loved The Simpsons when he was younger, to watch The Simpsons and say I didn't laugh once is just depressing to say.
Yeah,
Another
and
episode when Lisa becomes a vegetarian. That's hilarious.
yeah, and it's kind of funny with your mention of just a show should stop when things are good to kind of leave the series on a high note.
Mhm.
A similar show that has a bit of a similar problem, in my opinion, has been Family Guy, because I want to say it was after season three, four, or five. I forget when exactly. Just something happened with that show, and it's just not that funny to me anymore. Um, and I think I forget when it was, but I think it was when they decided to kind of switch Brian's personality to instead of being sort of a counterweight for Peter, just when they sort of made him just the know-it-all jackass. It was just like, I just don't like the direction you guys have gone with Brian. Just Brian was always the grounded counterweight to Peter's insanity and everything,
Yeah.
and I just didn't like that change. And then also just really, really, really just sort of hamming it up with the whole Stewie's gay gag. I I didn't really like that
Yeah.
too much. It was just like, Stewie was kind of fun when he was always trying to do his goofy zany plans of trying to kill Lois and everything. And now that you've just gone and put your chips in with this whole "Hey guys, did you know Stewie's gay?" sort of bit, it's just like, it's just not that funny, guys. Seriously.
Yeah. With Family Guy, I I watched the first few seasons, and I thought half of the episodes were there were half that were really funny. There was some that were just hilarious, but they were hilarious in how shocking they were, by how really insensitive they were to certain topics. So,
Yeah.
and that's where I was like, oh, this is so wrong, but it's funny. But that can only last so long. So
Yep.
so I haven't seen any of the newer episodes. So, but I've heard the same thing. I think God, what's another series? This will probably embarrass me. I used to be a Grey's Anatomy fan. Okay, don't make fun of me. I used to be a Grey's Anatomy fan. First 5 or 6 seasons I loved. Yeah, they're soapy, but they were good, and they had good actors in there. God, who was the one that played Denny? Shit, he plays he's in The Walking Dead now. Oh God, Oh, he plays Negan. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Negan Walking Dead. Oh my god, they won't even tell me the name of the actor. Oh, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Okay. Jeffrey Dean Morgan had a season where he was a terminally ill patient who fell in love with one of the nurses, and it was a sweet storyline. It was so good. And it really made the series for me. But they're now at season 19 or 20 with only one actor still there. And I've just got to ask, when is it time to stop? You know? It's like, when is it time? Just, ooh. But I stopped after George died, so that's me. You probably still have never watched the show, so.
I have not, but I have a lot of family and friends who, for a long while, followed this show so hard, and I think I heard sort of similar issues that after a while they just sort of fell off the boat and were just like, nope, I'm done. I'm getting off here.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah, it's better to end the series with everybody watching than for people to say, yeah, at season 5 I was done. Yeah, at season 4 I was done. Like that's just a shame. And you know, honestly, when Simpsons finally decides to hang it up, I probably will watch the final episode. Just because The Simpsons was so important to my comedic tastes and to, with my friends who are all Simpsons fans, how our humor was, that I kind of have to watch it just out of respect. But I don't intend on actually, I don't think I'll enjoy it. But yeah, I think some of the best, like I watched The West Wing for the second time. I finished it last week, and I love The West Wing. That ended perfectly, and that was 7 seasons. It's not a comedy, but it's a really good show. Just these series, these TV shows have to find a way to just end it while it's good. But they're cash generators, so they don't do that, which is a shame.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I know we had talked about this on my Discord server and everything, but Futurama has been sort of evergreen for me, that I can just watch through pretty much the entire show's available episodes and everything, and still get a laugh at most of the stuff. And they were kind of smart with the comedy and everything, that they kept the comedy style the same, but they kind of also kept up to date with things and kept the humor contemporary. And it's still so very good, and it's one show that I can come back to just continuously and just kind of rewatch and everything. And I know recently they did announce that they're making yet another new season of it, and with the cast being paid better than they previously have, which is great to see. It does kind of worry me a bit too, because of course, I just worry that the show may have sort of a Simpsons zombie period, where just this new season that's being funded, I believe, by Hulu, just sort of falls flat on its face, and then basically my memory of Futurama ends up on a low note. So
Yeah.
I have concerns with that, but I'm still looking forward to seeing how it pans out.
Yeah. I gotta watch Futurama. I've seen a few episodes and thought they were funny. I just never really dove into it, so I think that'll be my next series I get into. Okay, so on that note, Zero, that will be the end of the Cooperative Game Chat. Tune in next week till we talk about the latest and greatest that is going on in the gaming industry. I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.